Rhonda Noordyk, thank you so much for being here. I want to give you the rock star introduction that you deserve because you have been such an advocate for women in the divorce space. Rhonda founded the Women's Financial Wellness Center in 2014, and her mission is to reduce financial vulnerability for women who are going through divorce. She has literally impacted thousands of women with her signature coaching and her consulting process, as well as her podcast called Divorce Conversations for Women. Thank you for being here, Rhonda. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful.
I love your marketing by saying Checkmate. I love the strategy behind the finances with divorce, and I know I refer to you as a divorce financial strategist. Can you tell everyone what I mean by that, what you mean by that when you say it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for people, women in particular, that are contemplating or going through divorce is, what do I do next, right? What's the strategy? What's the plan? Why am I doing that? Why am I not doing that? And so the chess kind of analogy just seemed to fit. We can show up, we can be prepared, we can have a plan, and the queen piece on the chessboard can move in any direction. And I think sometimes as women, we feel limited in the directions that we can move. But the reality of it is, with the right confidence, with the right team of people, we can move in any direction. And it's really actually a really powerful place to be once we acknowledge and know that we actually do have power in these types of situations.
I really like that. And I think that women have a tendency sometimes to think that being strategic means they're being sneaky or they're taking their husband to the cleaners or something like that. And I like to say that's the furthest thing from the truth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That certainly is one thing that I hear as well. And I would say, what, for the women that want to take their husbands to the cleaners, I'm probably not a good fit for them, right? Like, I want to advocate for them and I want to empower them, but it's not at the detriment of the other person. Really, what we're trying to do is level the playing field and really make sure that women are in a good place as much as possible after the divorce is over.
Right. I don't think there's anything wrong with being strategic. And no one is looking out for you the way you can look out for you in your own divorce. And I tell people, you have one shot in this divorce to get the right settlement. One shot. This is going to affect your financial future for the rest of your life. And you want to make sure you've thought it all through and done the absolute best that you can for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that, you have shared some stats and I feel like they're great stats, right? Which is women's lifestyle tends to go down after divorce. And, we've seen as high as 41% on those numbers. Like, that's just not acceptable. And I think there's some really important things that we can do to help change the stats. One person at a time, right? One woman at a time. We can move the needle and start changing those stats.
I think that people get in the process of divorce and they think, well, my attorney is handling it. My attorney is going to negotiate for me. My attorney's got the strategy. And certainly as it relates to the legal process, that's okay thinking, right? They know what needs to be filed in court. They know how to navigate through the legal filings and the legal hoops that you have to jump through. But I don't really think attorneys are always thinking strategically, and I don't think that they're always advocating for their clients' financial settlements as strongly as they should.
I would agree with that. I think what I'm seeing or clients have seen, right, is, hey, my attorney sent me a proposal. Hey, take a look at this and let me know what you think. To which they, of course, are reaching out to say, hey, Rhonda, I don't know even where to go with this information, right? And so it's a matter of, taking a look at the proposal, analyzing the numbers, and then determining, which parts of that are in alignment and which parts are not, right? And there's always this kind of back and forth. But the attorneys are not necessarily, advocating on the financial side. They may say things like, oh, well, you can't keep the home. And I'm like, okay, well, do we know that for sure? Well, no. Well, then have we crunched numbers? No. And so, that is a tough spot. And I think a lot of times women that reach out that are in the middle of the process are seeing that firsthand. Rhonda, my attorney's not calling me back. I don't know what the strategy is. I don't know what I should be asking for. I don't know if what they're offering is even realistic or legitimate, And it's always hard when people haven't started the process to not be like, hey, listen, this is going to be the most challenging thing you've ever gone through. And here's some really, challenging things. Well, Rhonda, we're going to be amicable. Okay. But what if you're not? Right.
Right.
And the thing that I love about, helping women through this is each decision along the way, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We can take a look at the decision. We can evaluate the options. We can determine if there needs to be more information before making the decision, and then we can move forward from there. I mean, you and I have had plenty of conversations around, do we go down every attorney, right, in a high net worth case will say, you need a forensic account. Well, first of all, what does that person do? What is their role? And does it even make sense? Do we feel like we can move the needle,
Right.
And sometimes the answer is no. And sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is, yeah, we'll take it in phases or whatever that
Right.
looks like. But I think at the end of the day, it's helping women make good financial decisions. I was telling somebody the other day, I said, here's the thing. We could look at a scenario and there could be 5 different ways to resolve the issue. I mean, I'm part of several CDFA groups and people will post questions in there and people will chime in. And I'm like, we have a scenario and we have 10 different answers. It's not black and white. This whole
Right.
process is not black and white. It's just as much an art as it is a science, right? And there's some objective aspects and there's some subjective aspects. And so I think for women, it's helping them make good decisions, knowing all of the facts and the pieces. And ultimately, they have a choice on what direction they want to go a lot of times,
I get frustrated when a client is saying, my attorney is telling me I should just take this settlement and that I'll never do any better. And I don't even understand this settlement, or I don't know why I'm only getting X% of the retirement account. And my attorney is saying, just take it, just take it, just take it. This is all we're going to get. That's so frustrating to me.
Yeah, it's frustrating to me too, which is why you and I, are aligned in that, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that are kind of the stuff that nobody wants to talk about. We're not going to be able to Google it. We're not going to, what we're seeing, it's 50-50. It's an equitable estate. It's this, that, or the other. And it's like, when we actually pull back the curtain, exactly what you're talking about is happening. And, that was one of the very first clients I had was that exact scenario. They had filed. They were a year into the process, nothing to show for it. Husband had disclosed absolutely nothing related to the business, the properties. He came to the table, said to my client, hey, I'll give you, $1 million. And the attorney said, yeah, you can take that, if you want or not. And I said, how can we even accept that if we don't know what the total,
Right.
piece of the marital estate is worth? So we pushed back. We came back with a few questions. We did have the business valued, had a bunch of other stuff done. The attorney, which was interesting, very seasoned attorney, I feel like our work together, he actually was like re-energized. Like every email from that point forward was, let's go team, and client
Wow.
name, right? Like he was like invigorated because I think if, they get so used to doing the same thing that they forget like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm fighting for my client. And long story short, Tracy, she walked away with $4.6 million.
Wow.
Original offer was 1. Now, some people might be thinking, well, I would do anything for $1 million. Like, I'll take that. It's not about the dollar amount.
Right.
It's not about the zeros. It's about the transparency, the accountability, and making sure that people are getting what they're supposed to get based on the amount that's available, within the marital estate. It's just as important for people that don't have $1 million as it is those that do. I think there's a lot of misperception around that. But the point is, there's a lot of work to be done in this space.
Well, this woman's, future life after the divorce and her retirement was completely changed by that settlement, right? Having $1 million, great, but that is a certain lifestyle versus the $4 million. And let's just be honest, if there was that much value in that marital estate, why should her husband get to keep it all if she was legally entitled to that share of it?
Yeah, it's absolutely right. That's exactly right. And, there's all these gaps, so we could spend a lot, I know we have a short period of time, but there's all these gaps that unfortunately are playing against women in this space. The court system is not nice to women, right? I mean, I know that's a bold statement, but it's just the truth of what we're seeing behind the scenes.
Right.
And there's a lot of work to be done. So the women need to make sure that they've got the right team of people that truly are an advocate, for them to make sure that they can move forward and be and thrive really as much as possible after the divorce is over.
So you talked about this in your example, how important it was to get information. So there is this discovery process that we go through in the divorce. And I tell my clients who are new to it all that discovery is exactly what it sounds like. We are discovering what information the other side has. We want to know what the dollars are all about, what these assets are worth, and things like that. How important is that discovery process to the financial well-being of a woman after the divorce?
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And I feel like we have a small window of time in the very beginning to get a really good picture on what's there, right? And it might not unfold all at once. And are we going to find every penny? Maybe not, right? But we need to have a really good picture, because the longer we get down the road, the more we kick the can down the road, the further we are from kind of that baseline of information, right? So I actually have coined an acronym, which I'm not advocating for this acronym, but it's called the DAM method. And I'm like, let's avoid this, right? So basically what it stands for is the D is dodging the disclosure. But Rhonda, I thought the court systems were supposed to, hold people accountable. Okay, well, if they don't disclose all the information, then what? Well, then we just keep asking and asking and asking in hopes that they give us the information, but they're dodging it, right? They avoid it. They avoid getting the assets valued, the third-party assets, right? So they might not get the classic car value. They might not get the properties value. They might not get the business value. They might not get the, spending, which is where you come in, right? They avoid that third-party analysis. And then the M is misrepresenting information. Oh, look, we provided a report that is missing information, right? So the DAM method is something that I always like to tell people, like, listen, if you start to see some of these things, which you probably will in some form or fashion, this should be an immediate, like, okay, I see what's happening. I remember Rhonda talked about this. Like, I need to make sure that and there's strategies to deal with this, but we can't just continue to let it, continue down the road without addressing it.
Right.
Because women will be leaving things on the table if they don't know what questions to be asking, and have a clear picture of what's actually there.
You work very closely with divorce attorneys, with the clients. Can you give us an idea of how that works? I know that when we talk sometimes about the stories, we're talking about times where maybe a divorce attorney wasn't advocating well for a client or wasn't really digging into the numbers. And I know that we're not here to bash on attorneys, right? They have a lot of cases. They do the best they can. They do what they feel is right for their clients. But tell us more about how you work with the attorneys and how you are supportive on that divorce team.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say, there's certainly financial folks that would consider themselves a neutral person. They come in, they crunch the numbers, they're not giving advice or direction to either party. That's not my role. My role really is the advocate for women and helping them discover what direction they want to go. My role with the attorneys kind of depends on each situation. So I have often said, I can be your secret weapon behind the scenes. If you don't want anybody to know that we're working together, I'm totally cool with that. If you want me to be part of the interactions, we do a strategy session with the attorneys. I attend mediation with them. I can do any of those things. So it really is up to the client to determine what that looks like. Most of the time, from my experience, attorneys are initially hesitant to pull in other people because they want to kind of maintain control of the situation, or they haven't worked with other professionals before and they're more comfortable just going solo. So once we've been able to work, usually with an attorney for an initial time, they see the value of it because they realize their clients are getting unstuck, they're moving forward, they're engaged in conversations, they're responding to emails because they're not avoiding. And so I think there's this aspect of awareness around, having a team. I think the media, the marketing aspect within the divorce process has done a good job of moving in the direction of having a team more than it ever has in the past. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done in that space. but I will play whatever role people want me to play. I can be client facing with the attorneys, or I can be behind the scenes. And really, to your point, like the attorneys, the ones that really it works the best is the ones who understand, like, listen, I want to be able to work with a team. I see the value in working with a team. I have several clients I work with we're working on a case, and they'll call and say, hey, Rhonda, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? What if we did this? I'm like, ooh, yeah. On the flip side, right? Hey, here's what I'm thinking. What about this? And they're like, oh my gosh, that's great. So again, being that sounding board and really coming alongside to be strategic, right? To be able to help the clients is probably one of the things I love the most, is really when women feel like, gosh, there's still good people in this world that really care about me and want what's best for me. I want to be on that team.
I love the strategy part of my job too, being able to say to an attorney, hey, there's this issue with the numbers. And in another case I worked on, here's how we presented it to the court. What would you think of that? Is that something that would work in this case? I love finding information that we can use to our advantage that the attorney hadn't thought about. So that strategy part is right up my alley.
Yeah, it's fun. And I think people don't necessarily always think that is an option, or they're looking only for their attorney to have the strategies. But most of the time, the attorneys aren't necessarily always thinking that far ahead. It's probably part of just, the conditioning or whatever, but they're very responsive, reactive as not as much as being proactive and strategic. But and sometimes they're carrying those strategies in their head, and we have to kind of pull it out of them. Like, you probably do have a plan. Can you communicate that with the rest of us so we know what's going on and we can all get on the same page?
Well, that I love your stories, and I would love for you to share with us another story, maybe about a scenario where an attorney was, telling a client to settle, this is the best we can do, and Rhonda rides in and saves the day. Or what do you got for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple, each situation is so challenging and so overwhelming. But the story that I want to share is as much as it is financial, it's also all the other things. So have a client, husband is a physician, and they were going through the process. There were definitely some challenges with his behavior and things that he was doing, and quite frankly, probably one of the most challenging situations I have ever experienced, just from the level of dysfunction that's going on. But anyways, the first attorney that she was working with actually suggested that we connect. So I was working with her, and one of the suggestions that I made early on was, hey, listen, there is this non-qualified account, non-retirement account. Both are under 59 and a half, so they can access this money, right? Both party can access it. I saw that as exposed risk for my client, because husband, in addition to his full-time job, was doing this, e-trade thing on the side, and was spending a lot of money from that non-qualified account to be doing day trading. And he wasn't very good at it, by the way.
They never are.
No, they like to think they will be. And I'm like, really? We're going to gamble this money when whatever. But it was a real problem. I asked the attorney 3 times to split that account. Can we just split it? Can we just get the non-qualified money in her name, and he can do whatever he wants with his half?
Right.
Attorney ignored me 3 times. Finally, set of circumstances happened. We had to actually, the client had to part ways with that attorney. And so she ended up hiring a different attorney that I suggested. And that particular attorney, first thing I said is, this account right here is giving me heartburn, because I'm seeing the account value go down. It's lost $150,000 because of his bad behavior and using this money. Can we get this account? It's like, yeah, I don't see a problem with that. Literally 3 weeks later, that account was split. She had half in hers. He had half in his. Don't care what he does with his half. But had the attorney listened to me early on, she would have had a decent amount of money still available to split. And I wasn't asking for them to do anything that wasn't, it was a little edgy. I mean, sometimes attorneys are like, well, we'll just wait till it's done and blah, blah, blah. But again, identifying those risks, we don't have to wait. It's too hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. The money's gone. We're really in a position where it's difficult to advocate for that. So that's just an example. The attorney that I ended up working with, the second attorney, great. Like, I was like, go team. And he was grateful. So those are the kinds of things. We went from not so good situation, turned it around, and were able to, salvage what was left of that account before, it was drained to zero.
I love stories like that. I mean, the sad part for me is how much value she lost because of that delay, but at least it got split. It could have been worse. And I like the strategy behind that. So if you could tell women who are going through divorce one thing, just one thing, you're only allowed to tell them one thing, Rhonda, what would it be?
Oh, only one?
Yes.
Well, this might surprise people, but it's get out of your own way. Get out of your own way. I think we as women get in our own way. We get in our own head. We get in our second guessing ourselves. You know what you need to be doing a lot of times, not necessarily the strategies or the tactics, but you know when stuff doesn't feel right. And we need to start listening to that and saying, listen, I need to surround myself with amazing people. I've got to get out of my own way. I don't have to do this on my own. I need the right people to help me. And I think that is what I would say. Get out of your own way. Because ultimately it is in your benefit to do that as you're going through this.
So if people want to find you, Rhonda, where do you want them to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So on my website, we have a quiz called The Next Best Move. So if they're saying, hey, Rhonda, this is really great, but what is my next best move? Where do I go next? WFWCdivorce.com, and they can take the quiz to determine what their next best move is.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your knowledge and helping to give confidence and helping to empower women to really take the reins on this financial part of their divorce.
Thank you.